We begin with the man police say is responsible for shooting 10 people and injuring at least 13 others on a subway train in Brooklyn. Frank James is in federal court today. The 62-year-old is facing federal terror-related charges that could land him in prison for the rest of his life. He was taken into custody Wednesday in Manhattan's East Village after a 30-hour manhunt. Police believe James called the tip line on himself, alerting authorities to his location. That call was followed by other tips from individuals who then spotted him. CBS News' Kate Snow has more.
A day after being placed in federal custody, Frank James is set to make his first appearance at a Brooklyn court.
We were able to shrink his world quickly. There was nowhere left for him to run.
The 62-year-old subway shooting suspect was arrested without incident in the East Village on Wednesday after tipping off police to his location at a McDonald's, according to investigators. Cops were pointed in his direction by alert locals, like Zach DeHaan.
I see that guy, he walking from the screen. I see him from the cameras. So I thought, oh, this guy, let me call the police.
The subway shooting suspect faces a federal terrorism charge of carrying out violence against mass transit in what prosecutors believe was a premeditated attack.
If convicted, he will face a sentence of up to life imprisonment.
This surveillance video appears to show James entering a subway station early Tuesday morning before he allegedly detonated smoke bombs and fired 33 shots into a subway car, injuring at least 20 people. Investigators describe him as a lone wolf who posted hours of violent racist rants online, including threats to New York City Mayor Eric Adams.
Our children are safe because of the action of the chancellor, the teachers, the principals all over this city.
The New York City native was known to the NYPD and had an arrest record spanning at least 15 years in several states. Kate Snow, CBS News, New York.
I want to bring in Robert Strang. He's a former DEA agent and the CEO of Investigative Management Group. Bob, welcome. It's so great to have you here with us today.
Tanya.
And you were such a big help yesterday as we were covering this breaking story. But tell us how police were able to abduct Frank James so quickly. It just took them 30 hours from the time the crime was committed.
Right. And there were a lot of things that happened at the same time. The receipt that was left on the ground in the subway station actually gave them a lead to go to the Philadelphia storage unit. The weapon, they were actually able to trace back to where he purchased in Ohio. Going back on the N line with all the CCTV that was operable, not only in the subway station, but around the subway stations, they had the manpower to be able to go in and trace that back. In addition, you know, this was all happening at the same time with hundreds of agents and police working on this. So they really shrunk his world quickly.
And is that why you think he actually phoned authorities himself to tip them off as to his whereabouts?
Well, you know, it's interesting. That was kind of the first 24 hours, if you will, if you round it out. And then the second 24 hours was really a matter of talking with relatives, doing no-knock search warrants because of the fear that he might, while he was still out there, have access to ammunition and weapons. So you had a cyber investigation, you had a manhunt, you had interviews with relatives and friends, search warrants, no-knock search warrants. It was a full court press.
Sure.
And he really felt the pressure. And not to mention, you know, the citizens, because of social media and because of television, were able to really help the police in narrowing down his whereabouts.
All the tips and those emergency alerts we all got on our phones, all of that helped, like you said, to shrink his world very, very quickly. What is the significance of him being tried for a federal crime and for, you know, federal prosecutors being on this case?
Well, first of all, he's transported a weapon through 3 states. Having the federal arraignment today is huge because he'll spend the rest of his life, if convicted, in jail. And the federal system is very different than our state system. And unfortunately, over the past 5 or 10 years, our defendants are getting out of jail quicker than the cops that arrested them get off their shift. So, you know, we're trying to make that change where unfortunately, this kind of thing will happen again unless we can continue to get people in jail.
Well, that's chilling to hear that this kind of thing will happen again. In your expert opinion, what do we need to do to stop this from happening again? What needs to change?
Right. Look how many times he was arrested. Look at Frank James, and right? He has 13 arrests, and yet he purchased a weapon.
Multiple states, right.
You know, why wasn't he in jail? You know, and every time we have a defendant, whether he's a lone ranger like this individual or someone who's part of a bigger and larger organization, we always go back and we see this tremendous history of criminal activity.
Let me ask you something. Could that gun seller in Ohio who legally sold him that 9mm Glock that was found at the scene of the crime and that police say he used in this crime, could that gun seller be found liable?
It's possible, but he probably did follow the protocol in Ohio. You know, because most gun sellers, as Agent DeVito said yesterday, are monitored very closely by ATF.
But even with a rap sheet that long, if you apply to buy for a gun and you have multiple arrests in multiple states, you can still buy a gun?
Part of the problem here, and this is only after 48 hours, but these are all misdemeanors.
Right.
They've all been taken from a felony and pled down to a misdemeanor. So no, that's part of the problem.
Right.
We have to be able to prosecute these people, keep them in jail, and keep them from doing things that they did here.
Robert Strang, thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate your
Thanks,
insight.
Tanya.
Thank you.